And welcome back to the Hotline. We are talking engines. We are talking Williams signing with Mercedes beyond 2026. Do they know something that McLaren and the rest of us don't? How strong is that Mercedes engine going to be? I mean, that's one of our main stories there. Mercedes signing with Williams, or Williams signing with Mercedes, so to speak, to have their engines. But also, we're looking at all the F1 teams and their engines from 2026 onwards. Yep, Audi's going to be there at some point as well. And McLaren, a threat for 2024. But not only a threat, someone thinks there could be one of the main threats for 2024. McLaren fans, optimistics, fingers crossed, let's hope so. So let's get into this Williams signing with Mercedes. This is from planetf1.com by Sam Cooper. So they've confirmed they'll continue to use Mercedes from the 2026 season onwards as these new engine regulations loom. Alongside McLaren, Williams is one of the two question marks it was heading into that 2026 season, with the private team having six options to choose from to power their car, their chassis. But they've kept faith with Mercedes, and team principal James Vowles' former outfit will continue to use their engines once these new regulations arrives. Is it because James Vowles and Toto Wolff are really close? Is it because James Vowles knows that Mercedes, once again, for the 2026 regulations, are ahead of the curve? I guess, well, only time will tell, but 2026 is a while away. So Williams, though, are keeping the faith with that Mercedes power unit. They've used Mercedes since the start of the hybrid era in 2014, and how good was that season? They probably should have won a race a couple of times, but I think their strategy was a bit too, let's finish P2. But the new deal will see that partnership extended beyond 2026. Now, the Grove-based squad, they've not specified how long the deal runs for, but they've become the second customer team to be supplied by engines made in the Mercedes Brackley base alongside McLaren. And Val said that they've enjoyed a partnership with Mercedes but are thrilled to extend that collaboration. He says the expertise, support and technology that Mercedes brings to the table align perfectly with our team's aspirations in the medium and long term. So this long-term arrangement with Mercedes is a positive step and forms part of our objectives for the future, very team speak there, whilst we still retain our design and manufacturing expertise and capabilities in-house. Now, Wolff has said on it that we're delighted to confirm Williams as the second customer team that will supply the 2026 power unit regulations. Yeah, not engines, power units, with all their hybrid bits, etc. When more hybrid technology, they're going to be more powered by electric, and that's one thing that Mercedes were really good going into the 2014 era. But who else is using what engine? And this is something that the race.com has, and as we know, it says 6 engine manufacturers have been registered for the start of these next power unit cycles, engine cycles, whatever you want to call it, which begins in 2026 and will run until the end of the 2030 season. So that's an increase of 2 compared to the current list of suppliers. We've got Audi and Ford supporting Red Bull powertrains program, and they are joining Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda and Alpine/Renault, a roster that's been pretty much unchanged since the 2015 season. There's also the potential, it says, of a 7th manufacturer joining mid-cycle as the Andretti Cadillac project, which, as we know, has FIA approval, but not yet Formula One approval. But they've got that commitment with the General Motors brand, a massive brand who owns Cadillac, to provide an engine from 2028. Can Formula One afford not to support Andretti? Because they pretty much came out and said, no, it's Andretti or no. Seems to be the general consensus. But for now, here's the complete list of the 10 existing teams which supplies each, which their engine supply. So 10 existing teams, let's know what their engine supply. So Mercedes, we've got Mercedes, funnily enough, the Works outfit. Ferrari, another surprise here. I know it's going to shock you. Ferrari. Yes, now we've got McLaren Mercedes, very much back in the 90s there. And Aston Martin are going with Honda. And this is quite interesting. This is quite a big change for Aston Martin, who up until 2026 have used Mercedes powertrains. Now, it said despite announcing it would withdraw from the 2021 season, Honda have never really left F1. Red Bull has continued to use its engines under its Red Bull powertrains banner since, and Honda, effectively a supplying contractor with Honda's name, returned to the make of the engine name for Red Bull and AlphaTauri for essentially last year. And it's also registered as a manufacturer for the FIA for the next F1 engine regulations. And in May last year, a program giving Aston Martin, currently supplied by Mercedes, exclusive use of its 2026 engine. It does seem a bit weird though. Aston Martin, a really, really luxury car brand powered by a Honda. Not so luxury, more of a common car brand, but obviously, I think in many ways just as cool. So this works deal is what Aston Martin's Performance Technologies Martin Whitmarsh, former McLaren boss, hopes one of the last parts of the jigsaw puzzle for Aston Martin's long-term F1 plan. And as we know, in that Red Bull, that Honda engine is fairly good. So Team Enstone, so no surprises here though. Alpine, funny enough, with Renault. Team Enstone did have the briefest of spells without Renault power. Team Enstone, as when they were Lotus, I believe, they had Mercedes. But Williams and Mercedes, we've just spoken about that, been Mercedes since 2014. Red Bull's second team is going to be Red Bull's power units, sponsored or powered, developed alongside Ford. Audi, yep, they are going to be using the Audi engine. Audi is joining F1, as we know, in 2026, and it's currently building its preparations for that program, and it involves a major takeover of the Sauber squad. They're going to be Audi engines. Haas, though, interestingly, to be announced, but many think it's going to be Ferrari. But they're the last ones with a question mark, and it says Haas, which has a close alliance, technical alliance, with Ferrari, has used its engines exclusively since it joined in 2016, as in, they have had no other engine supplier, and it's the only team yet to announce a supply deal for the start of the next set of rules. It's very likely. After the Sauber, it's going to be with Audi Sauber, it'll be Audi. It's very likely to be Ferrari. I'd pretty much have that as a safe bet. So our last part, though, of talking, well, not really quite engines, but they have some with Mercedes, so I kind of cheated a bit. But Verstappen has named McLaren as a potential threat in 2024. Yet Verstappen expects rivals to close the gap in Red Bull, and this is from Formula Uno. Verstappen expects rivals to close the gap to Red Bull in 2024. Although he specifically identified McLaren as a possible threat in the upcoming campaign. He said there isn't much left to be said about Verstappen's dominance last season. The 26-year-old left no doubts about who would claim that championship. Absolute dominance. Still, there's every reason for Red Bull to face a greater challenge. And it says purely by virtue of probability, it seems unlikely the reigning champions will enjoy the same unmatched dominance this season. Yep. Quite the optimists, let's hope. We've got Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes and Aston Martin, all theoretical threats. Now, whilst reflecting on his historical third championship, he's outlined what he expects from the chasing pack, and he said, "We were the only team that was really consistent," he said, on the Talking Ball podcast. "Behind us, it was really up and down. One team was second, then another team. That's when the battle was quite close behind us. It all depends on how much they improve over the winter. The one I think was most impressive behind us, from where they started to where they ended, was definitely McLaren. It looks like they might be very strong next year. And as ever, identifying who will contend is a difficult task to complete over the winter period, but can you really argue with it? If McLaren, they pretty much did what Aston Martin did, but in season, which you can make an argument is more impressive because they've had to run their season and improve their car. They didn't just have the peace and quiet of the winter. Once again, I'm not taking away to how awesome that leap was from Aston Martin, but if McLaren can make the same leap over the winter break, you could make an argument for them being the number one contender to hunt down Red Bull come Bahrain. All I would like, and it's not much, well, it is, I would just like going into a weekend not knowing who is going to be the fastest. It's probably going to be Red Bull if I was a betting man, but the optimist in me pretty much, I mean, you imagine going into a weekend, you could be Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, it could be Red Bull, and then closely followed, chasing by Aston Martin and Alpine and, the rest, for example. That would be immense. Especially if it comes down to very much like 2021, very track specific, car setup specific, who has got it right. And sometimes who gets it right in qualifying doesn't necessarily get it right in the race. And it's magical. But let's hope for a much closer season. And yeah, anyway, this has been the Hot Lap. Thank you very much for listening. If you've made it to the end, comment below. Let us know what your thoughts are on whether McLaren can be a threat for 2024. Let's hope. I think they will be. But what do you think? Thank you very much.